loss. At the end of the day, do you believe that, to quote a Rolling Stone lyric, you can't always get what you want, you get what you need? At the end of the day, or at this stage in our collective lives, are we all getting as a generation what we need as opposed to the Tom Wolfe concept of the 80s of what we want? Are we where we should be?
Well, I'm not enrolled in that kind of perspective, because our needs and our wants, to me, are internal dramas. And I think in that sense, every single moment, because every single moment is a spiritual journey, whether someone realizes they're on one or not, I think in every moment we get what we need in order to get what we want. You know, it's like, so I think what we think we want is not, we think we want something because we think it would make us happy. But we are erroneous about what would make us happy much of the time. So I think if we, instead of thinking that we know what would make us happy, realize that a loving universe has given us in this moment, if you will just dwell correctly and impeccably within this moment, you will be happy. You know, that's the meaning, the metaphysical meaning of the line, virtue is its own reward. The only real happiness comes from a certain experience of yourself. That and that happiness is a decision. And when you talk about our generation, yeah, our generation has lived enough to know how many times have we gotten the money and we still weren't happy. We got the house, we still weren't happy. We got the relationship, we still weren't happy. I think people are getting that it's an inside job. Happiness is about the emotional decisions that we make on any given day that create the emotional tenor of our lives. I mean, some people just look at things in a way that are bound to make them sad. And other people have trained their attitudinal muscles. You know, someone said to me years ago, he said, "You're a sufferer," as he walked out the door. And he was right. So I had to learn that about myself.
What did he mean by that?
He meant that I took everything and I turned it into a tragedy. I turned it into a reason to be sad. I was very young. It was my early 20s, I think. I didn't, you know, it was the age when you know, carried Russian poets around and, you know, you thought it meant you were conscious. The capacity to be happy shows a conscious being, like little children.
There are millions of people who read you, watch you, listen to you, and I presume in many cases attempt to model their perceptions around yours and the Course. My presumption is that they believe that when they reach the end of that discovery trail, they will be happy, holy, complete beings, living the light of the Holy Spirit. Are you happy?
First of all, I am happy. But secondly, I do think that there are some women particularly who have modeled their careers after mine, which I think is, I love it. And I see it as a bit of a legacy that I get to experience in my lifetime. So I think that's a great honor. In terms of people modeling their perceptions on mine, I think that plays my audience small. People know who read my books. What I'm talking about are the ideas in A Course in Miracles.
Yes.
And if in my book I talk about my own perception, it is more often than not talking about, here I had it wrong, and this is what I see about the mistake. In terms of my lectures, nobody people might, leave, and I'm just not their cup of tea, But nobody leaves there thinking I'm on some trip of, my perceptions are perfect and you should model yours after mine. The Course in Miracles is far more sophisticated. I like to think that I am. That's not the trip that this is. It's been painful for me in my career, as a matter of fact. There's a term in Alcoholics Anonymous, a phrase that goes, contempt prior to investigation. And in my career, which I've been at for 26 years now, it has been painful to me. People who have neither read my books nor been to my lectures, who had this caricature of a guru trip that did not exist. Mm-hmm. And it was quite painful for me in the years before I knew how to before I knew deeply the level on which I can't control other people's perception. Also, the culture has evolved and moved forward. So a spiritual perspective is no longer seen as this radical fringe, New Age craziness. So I think of myself a little bit as, one of the first to take the beach at Normandy.
Yeah.
And they succeeded at taking the beach, but there were a lot of bullet holes in the first few waves. So I don't think that people who actually know my work in any way look at me. I mean, I'm simply not that, nor do I present myself that way. I think that there is such a thing as an enlightened master. But I'm not one, nor have I ever thought I was one, nor have I ever presented myself as one. That's not the model here. The model here is, as the Course in Miracles says, the teacher of God is half a step ahead in time. I'm like a Russian literature professor. I've read the Tolstoy, I've read the Dostoevsky, I've read these things a lot, and perhaps any understanding I have can help you find and clarify your own passion for the material. But you don't listen to the Russian literature professor and not read the Russian novel. That's who I am and what I am professionally. I'm not Dostoevsky, I'm the Russian lit professor.